This video is sponsored by Absolute Truth Accounting. Drafting starting from 2,500 Rand, compilation starting from 3,000 Rand, and independent review starting from 5,000 Rand. Contact us on our direct line, which is 060-187-0680, or our email address, which is absolutetruthaccounting@gmail.com. Thanks. Peace. We know what is true and what isn't. How do we as humans know that, right? So in terms of science, as per AI, it says, science establishes truth through a rigorous, iterative process of observation, experimentation, and peer review that tests and refines hypotheses against empirical evidence. It does not claim absolute truth, but rather builds a provisional understanding that is the most reliable explanation available at a given time. Key components include the scientific method, which involves creating testable hypotheses and designing experiments to validate or falsify them, and the principle of replication, where other researchers must be able to reproduce the findings. That's the scientific explanation, right, on how they establish truth. So when they have that, they can regard the evidence that they find from establishing that truth as reliable evidence. Okay, I'm just saying that because as auditors, a bit far from the mic here, as auditors, we also have a framework that tries to establish truth with regards to incomes, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and we call that an audit trail, right? So everybody will come to the same conclusion about what the truth is. In science, everybody has to reperform it, and we have to all come to the same truth, you know. And in auditing, we also all have to come to the same truth about what that income is, what that expense is, what that asset is, or what that liability, or if it is in essence, right? So there is a framework to establish what the truth is, and it basically, for me and you, is we all have to come to the same experience with our firsthand, right? That's what is true. So I want to explain the difference between what the Hindu system is saying and what the scientific system is saying in terms of what is true and what isn't, right? So the scientific framework, it still can't make sense of the universe on a rudimentary level, right? Because I'm not a scientist, but I know on a rudimentary level, they still can't make sense of the universe because what the macro or the universe on a large scale, what the science is on a large scale is not the same on a subatomic level, right? What the physics is saying in a large sense is not supporting what it's saying at a subatomic level, because of the scientific experiment called collapse of the wave. They're not sure what the source is of the universe because the physics is not talking to each other. But in terms of the Hindu scriptures, they have a framework or explanation of the universe that's complete, and also that explains the fabric of reality being rooted in consciousness. That's also interesting because in terms of science, with this framework that I just read out just now, they're reperformable, and they must their peers must be able to reperform it, and researchers must be able to reproduce the findings, the principle of replication. There's nothing like that yet for consciousness. If you didn't know, now you know. There's no framework where they can reliably establish what consciousness is. But the Hindus, they far advanced, for some reason. They know exactly what consciousness is, and also what the implications of the nature of reality being consciousness. So they have this explanation, right, on how to know that the fabric of reality is rooted in consciousness. And they know not just consciousness, they're saying it's consciousness, existence, and bliss. There's 3 words for their one word. Their one word said, this is Satchitananda. Everything that we explain through our human constructs is actually just consciousness, existence, and bliss. It's just our human experience wants to make sense of this, and we do it through these scientific angles, and with our mental acumen, we're trying to make sense of this universe through these reperformable frameworks and whatnot. That's just it's a human construct, right? All this is consciousness, existence, and bliss. And it's interesting because science has no explanation on what consciousness is. And the Hindu scriptures explain that in order for you to know and come to a first-hand understanding of what the nature of reality is, there's only 4 ways you can come to that understanding. And the 4 ways are Jnana Yoga, which is empirical philosophical speculation, where you use your first-hand experience to try to dissect what the nature of reality is. Not the scientific framework, but just through your own understanding and reasoning, you're trying to make sense of what the source of creation is truly. What is the nature of reality? That's called Jnana Yoga, right? Raja Yoga, which is meditation. Through meditation, you can come to know the nature of reality is Satchitananda through a first-hand experience. Like we explained, in what is true, you have to experience it first, and everybody must come to this experience firsthand. That's what true is. So they say everyone can come to this experience firsthand, that the nature of reality is Satchitananda by 4 ways. That is, like I said, the Jnana Yoga, which is empirical philosophical. I keep saying empirical. It's empirical philosophical speculation, which is like discernment through your mental acumen, trying to figure out what the nature of reality is. It still will lead you to everything is consciousness. The other ways are Raja Yoga, which is meditation. You'll still come to find out that everything is just consciousness through your first-hand experience. The other way is Karma Yoga, which is when you live your life in a way that's purely for no results. You don't want no rewards attached to your service. That's another way you can come to know that truly firsthand that everything is just consciousness. There's nothing really going on here. You are just part and parcel of consciousness. And the last way, which is the best way and it's the easiest way, is Bhakti Yoga, which will still get you at the door where everything is just consciousness, existence, and bliss. And that means pure, I think it says unalloyed, whatever that means, but pure devotion to God, where you don't want anything from life, you're not seeking anything, you just know God is the source and God is the end, and everything is just God. And because that's what consciousness is, it's this higher explanation that even science can't come to, that we are just part and parcel of consciousness, and that is what God is, the essence of God, right? So it says in the Hindu scriptures, you can only come to know God or the essence of reality through those 4 ways. And science will never be able to get to that point, because consciousness is not something that is located in our perceptive reality. It's something that is happening outside of what we can perceive, so to speak. So outside of our experience of being a human exists this consciousness. Science agrees that it is, consciousness is in our experience, but they don't have the evidence that they want, that that they said is it must be, they must be able to reproduce the findings, and there must be a replication, there must be a scientific method that through observation, experimentation, and peer review that tests and refines hypotheses. They don't have that for consciousness. So they coincidentally, they can't conclude on anything with regard to consciousness, even though they know that it is there. But the Hindus, they know exactly what consciousness is, how to come to the experience firsthand. So they're saying that this is absolutely true. These are the ways you have to come to this experience. There's no other way. And that's what the nature of reality is. So science will never be able to come to that understanding because the framework they're using won't give them access. It won't give them access into what consciousness is. They're doing it through a lens that's not going to give them access into what consciousness is, because consciousness is not it's not a tangible thing. And the Hindus are saying everything is consciousness, and these are the only ways you can come to that explanation. So I guess what does that actually mean then for a human then, if everything is consciousness and science can't figure it out, but there's like civilizations like the Hindus that know exactly what consciousness is, and they know the implications of it of consciousness on a human's life. What does that mean for all of us? If it's this important, and it's so connected to all facets of our experience, like the Hindu scriptures are saying, and it gives us explanation on where we come from, where we go after death, and what reality truly is, because science hasn't given us that. What's the big deal? Why don't we know this? And what's the impact on one's life if you're not coherent of these facts? That's the obvious next step in this equation is, what does this all mean for the layman, for the guy on the ground? What does the universe being rooted in consciousness mean? And what does it mean that science won't ever be able to critically define that? And I guess I'm going to go into that in the next chapter. So, Shine in the Light, chapter 7. Peace.